Okay. I feel like I look orange, but I do not want to be here all night, like I always say. Ah. Oh my goodness. Well, I think I look orange, but I try not to. I don't know. I don't know what's going on, but I'm just, well, actually, hold on. I was taking notes and I was trying to like keep the flyaways down, so that's what that's all about. Okay, so I'm doing a bit of aromatherapy, so if you see any of this vapor here, it's because that's what I'm doing. So yeah, don't mind that. Or just that's what it is. Actually, that's all I wanted to say. Okay. I feel like I look orange, but I do not want to be here all night, like I always say. Ah, I don't know. I don't know that made a difference. Whatever. Okay. Anywho, so action. What's Okay, so you are listening to the Emancipated Star. I am the star who became emancipated at the age of 16 years young. This is the story of my journey before, during, and after my emancipation. So this is video number 2. I'm going to grab my notes so I can get right into it. This is video number 2 of season 1. As I stated in the last video, season 1 is it's titled something like foster care or family separation, like one of the two. And this season is specifically about the events that led me to led me to be placed into the foster care system and my life experiences throughout my time in state custody as a ward of the state of Florida. So in the previous video, which was video number 1, I discussed the events that led me to being placed in, let me backtrack. I'm thinking about what it was titled. The video is titled something like the motel in Miami. So yes, in video number 1, the previous video that I did right before this one, I discussed the incidents that occurred around the age of 5 months that led to me being placed in the foster care system around that time. So like in like May 1999-ish. So in this video, I am discussing the foster home as I remember it, like the structure, as well as the family dynamic between the adults and the children that were in the home. I'm also, and bear with me, I need to look at my notes because I have a lot to say. Oh yes, so I'm going to discuss like who was in the household. There were other foster girls in addition to my biological sister and I, and then there were other children who were not fosters, but they were the biological grandchildren of my foster mother. So there were a lot of children in this home. I'm also going to discuss who like the frequent visitors were, caseworker visits as well, because we did get frequent visits from caseworkers, of course, who came to inspect and take notes. I'm also going to discuss just like general memories that I have about like who came over to the house. Like her friends would come over, my foster mother's friends would come over to the house, as well as other children in the neighborhood. So I'm just going to do like a rundown of all of that, and yeah, just like what life was like just a general synopsis of what life was like in the foster home as I remember it, and I do remember things quite vividly. So yeah, there's a bit to say here, and then that should wrap up episode number 2. And then I will move into other things that occurred in the foster home, but I will save that for later. Okay, so I'm gonna try not to be here all day because I know myself. Bueno, so starting out with the layout and the structure of the foster home. So as I mentioned before, but in case this is like, excuse me, hold on. So in case this is like your first video, or this is your first time watching a video in the series, I do recommend that you just like start from the beginning. But I'll try to just like state a few things like for people who just like, I don't know, maybe missed like something that I said. But yes, just so in case you did not know, I was placed in a foster home in the city of Miami, in Miami, Florida, around the time that I was like 5 months young. And I was placed in a foster home, specifically in the suburbs of Miami. I did not grow up in the actual city. I grew up in the suburbs of Miami. My foster home had a total of 10 people in it. There were 8 children and there were 2 adults. So my actual foster parent was a middle-aged Black American woman, and she had an adult daughter who lived in her home as well. Her adult daughter, who I believe was like in her like mid-30s, maybe a little bit older, maybe a little bit younger, but let's just say like 35, right? This woman had 4 children. She had 3 sons and she had 1 daughter. So she had, in order, she had a son, like her eldest was a son, the next born was a daughter, and then the next 2 were 2 sons who were closer in age. I do not believe that they all had the same father, but I don't know. They all had my foster mother's last name, so I imagine that that's because their fathers were not in their lives. The home was entirely like led by the women in the home, and like specifically my foster mother. So I don't recall there ever being any men who were invited to the home, with the exception of my foster uncle. I do think my foster uncle was the biological son of my foster mothers, but he lived separately. He lived in his own home. In fact, I believe he lived in Georgia, and we would visit him in the state of Georgia like every once in a while. So he only came to visit every so often. Like he wasn't really around that much. And fortunately for us, there were not like men coming in and out of the home, with the exception of boys that my foster sister let into the home, but I will get to that in a minute. So yes, there were 10 people in the home, 8 children and 2 adults. 4 children were the biological children of my foster mother's adult daughter, slash the grandchildren of my foster mother. And the other 4 children were myself, my biological sister, and 2 other foster girls who were older than us. The foster girls came from other foster homes. I believe that they were placed in a foster home together. The reason that I say that is because I do remember that sometimes the older foster girls would tell stories at night when we were all supposed to be sleeping. I'll get to like where we slept in a moment, but just really quickly, I remember they would tell stories, and they would be like, they would say things like, oh, remember like that one person, or remember that other kid, like remember this, remember that. So, you know, me being like very young, you know, I used to wonder like, where did they come from? Like, once I, you know, as you like grow up and you start to like question things more, I'm like naturally a critical thinker. So it dawned on me a little bit later that there was a time where we didn't all know each other, and I was able to connect the dots and stuff once I found out that I too was a foster child, because of course no one told me that initially. But long before I discovered that fact, I would hear them tell stories about like other homes that they lived in and other foster parents that they had. So I do believe that they were placed together, maybe in a foster shelter, and that's where they met before they were taken in by my foster mother. I'm not really sure. I was really young and I didn't really get to ask those kinds of questions to them, but that's just what my like intuition tells me. So yeah, they knew each other before. My sister and I, of course, like we knew each other, but I was 5 months young, like approximately like 7 months young when I actually was taken in by my foster mother. So all of my memories begin in Miami. I have no recollection, of course, of life before I was placed in the foster home. However, my birth sister actually did remember our birth parents and our 3 older siblings, and I guess like life before she was also placed in the foster care system with me. So yeah, that actually did create some tension between us, but I'll get to that in a moment. So just going back to like the fact that there were 4 foster girls. The 4 of us foster girls, we slept in the basement of this home. This home is pretty small. I believe I read that it's like about like 1,500 square feet altogether. Like when I searched it up like years and years and years later, actually very recently I searched it up. But yeah, it's a pretty small home. Of course, as children, it felt like much larger to, or as a child, I mean, I don't know about the other children, but for me, I used to think that the home was so big because I was like obviously that small. I was like a newborn baby when I was placed into the system, and it was all that I ever knew. So I used to think that the home was like really big. But anywho, so the layout, I would like sketch it really quickly, but I didn't think to do that like right before I started this video. But if I could just describe it, so it's a pretty small home. On the first floor, like when you walk in, there's like a kitchen to the left and a dining room, and then like as soon as you walk in, like you walk into the what is called the front room or the family room. I think Black Americans call it like the front room. So like when when my foster mother's mother would yell at us, she'd be like, "Get out my front room, get out my front room," like that kind of thing. So the front room, or no, it was the living room and then it was the front room. So the living room had this like opening and then like an archway basically, and then there was an additional room, and that's the room that had the television. So that room was like the living room. That room had a door that led to the backyard. The backyard had this pretty expansive wooden porch, and like to the left side of the porch there was like a small like basketball area. It's not really a basketball court, just like, you know, strip of asphalt, and they played basketball there. There was like a basketball hoop installed into the ground, and then beyond that was the garden. So like the garden area was, it spanned from like the left side of the yard behind the basketball court, and like behind the wooden porch. So this is the porch. It's not gonna make sense. I don't know why I'm like trying. It's not even gonna make sense. But basically, like if this is the porch, and okay, I like want this to make sense, but I don't think it's gonna make sense. Basically, like if this is the porch, the garden is here, the basketball area is here, and then there's like a piece of grass here. So like when you walk outside the back door, that's like what you see immediately, like the porch and then the basketball stuff to the left of it, and then like to the right of it, there was just the grassy area of the field. So when there were birthday parties and gatherings and cookouts, typically things were set up on the right side of the field where the grass was, and of course refreshments, the food, and like the seafood boils and stuff, that was usually like kept on like the wooden porch. And then yeah, the little garden. It sounds like it was a lot, and I mean to me it was, but this is a pretty like small space. There were just all those different things. So yeah, and then the garden was like behind it. My foster mother loved to garden. In fact, in my poetry collection, I have a poem called "When We Garden" because she was a like pretty intense woman from what I remember, and the most calm I ever saw her was typically when she was gardening, and that's like when I actually liked to be around her. I liked to see her in her garden. I liked to learn. To this day, I really like gardening. I really like plants. I mean, I love like greenery, like in nature, generally speaking. But yeah, I do think that maybe part of that came from just being with her in the garden and like sticking to her so much, because I was the youngest of all of the children, and I just clung to her like in my earlier years, probably because like she and I naturally bonded, like with me being a newborn and her being like the only like parental figure I had. And then sometimes, or I'll say actually like pretty often, the children would get in trouble, they would be beaten and reprimanded, and I would be included in that. Like I would be rounded up with all the other children. And I think that naturally I started to cling to my foster mother so that I could avoid being in trouble too, because I figured like if she saw that I was with her, like when the other children were like misbehaving or doing something they weren't supposed to, then maybe they would spare me. And you know, sometimes she did, sometimes she did not. But I will talk about that stuff in episode 3. Going back to the layout and the structure of the home. So the backyard was pretty expansive as I remember it, despite being small. Like there were like just many like divisions of it. There was enough space in like the grassy area for there to be a blow up pool. So I do remember like swimming frequently, and I almost graduated to like the big kids pool right before I was taken away from my foster home. But I do remember being like really excited about that and excited about my like swimming abilities. Anywho, so yeah, that's the backyard. Oh yeah, there were also trees. I do want to like say this because I do remember, I don't know if I put it in my poetry collection, it's right here. But I think I did mention like I used to climb the trees, like, and I don't know, it's funny to me now. But yeah, I just like thought it was just so cool, and I don't know, maybe it's like the natural like rebellious person in me. But I used to like to climb the trees and like jump off of the trees with the other children. I do remember doing that all the time. But I struggled obviously because I was so small, and they would tell me like you're too small, like you need to get away from us. But I just wanted to be wherever all the other children were. Like when my eldest brother, or my foster brother, when he would play basketball, sometimes like I would get in the way and they would be like, Star, move, move. And I'd be like, no, because I just wanted to be where all the other children were. I didn't realize like how small I was at the time. And sometimes like they would get yelled at. Like my foster mother would be in the kitchen and she would be washing dishes and stuff, and there was of course like a window, so she would like, we didn't even know she was right there sometimes, but whenever she saw me like on the asphalt, like on the basketball court, or running behind the children, or like on the handlebars when they would ride their bikes and they would put me on the handlebars, she would yell at us and yell at them. She'll always say like, be careful, like watch out for me. So things like that did make me think that she cared for me, despite her like beating the like almost the life out of me sometimes. That's the thing that was like kind of confusing, you know, because at the same time I felt like she was pretty protective over me. But who knows, maybe she was just protecting her paycheck because she was paid to care for all of us, you know. Two things could be true at once. I don't know. But I do remember those things, those moments like quite vividly. And it's one of the things that's interesting is that I used to climb the trees back in Miami, and then when I was transferred to my birth parents' custody, I also like started to climb the trees at the school playground, and I convinced like 2 kids to do that with me. So we used to like climb, not the trees, excuse me. We used to climb the slides and like jump off the slides. I don't know what the heck I was thinking, but it's amazing that I was able to get like 2 other kids to do that with me. Bless their hearts. I hope their knees are okay. I hope they're okay. I'm glad I'm okay too, because that's like wild. But anyhow, so I do remember there were fruit trees, I think a mango tree and a limon or a lime tree in the backyard. I don't know, in the front yard there may have been like one more tree, but yeah, I mean, it's Miami, there are fruit trees everywhere, you know. So yes, I do remember being very fond of the backyard. I spent a lot of time outside, unlike the children of today, unfortunately. We actually had to spend a lot of time outside because there was not much to do. I mean, there were TVs and stuff, but not like the way we have like devices everywhere. Like people wear a device as a watch and like talk to their watch. People have like, we had like Nokia brick phones, and not everybody like had a Nokia brick phone, or just like a mobile phone. So, or mobile phone. But anywho, I remember like we had this like white TV. It's like a, I don't know what they're called anymore, but it's like a mini TV. It's like really small, and it looks like a cube, and it was only in black and white. Like we had one of those in the basement. And sometimes like we would watch it occasionally, but there was of course like a color TV that was like flat screen in the living room. But anywho, so going into the house, that's the backyard. I started with the backyard. I really liked the backyard. I spent a lot of time outside, like I said. The inside of the home was pretty small. On the first floor, like I said, like there was only like the two like living rooms, the family room, the living room, the dining room, and the kitchen. And then I think off to the side of the kitchen, actually, there was this. I think it was like a screened porch or something like that. Yeah, it was something like that, because when I met my birth parents, that's where we were told to go have dinner with them. But I will talk about that at another time. But yeah, so there was like this like room that was off to the side, like of the kitchen and the dining room area. But yeah, it was pretty small. Like that was like the whole front, or excuse me, the whole first floor level. Going upstairs now, because when you walk in, the staircase is like pretty much right there in your face, like to the right side, and then like the wall was lined with mirrors. So you go up the stairs, and there were 3 bedrooms and a bathroom, like all the way down the hall, and it was a very, very short, narrow hallway. So you go up the stairs, and there was one room here, bathroom here, and then like on this wall, like was the primary or the largest bedroom. That was my foster mother's bedroom. And then of course there was like a full bathroom, and then the 2 rooms like against the wall that you face when you're going up the stairs. Those 2 bedrooms were designated for literally just one child only. So despite there being 10 children in this, or 8 children in this household, those rooms were occupied by the eldest grandchildren of my foster mother. So her eldest grandson had like the first room when you walk up the stairs, and there were 2 single beds in that room, but he typically slept by himself. I'm not really sure. Actually, I mean, I think I know why. I think the second bedroom was there to make it look like, you know, the foster children. I'll get to it in a moment, but yeah, I just like realized something. But anyway, so there were 2 single beds in that room, but he slept in that room by himself, typically on one of the single beds. I remember that on the bed, he slept on the bed that was closest to the right side. Like when you walk in, there's like a door like parallel. I mean, there's a bedroom, like a bed parallel to the door. He slept on that bed, and I remember that because like I was rarely like ever upstairs, but I remember one time like all the children, the smaller children, we all like I guess like went upstairs. I think maybe to get like my foster mother or something, and his brothers, his like blood brothers, were of course more comfortable going into his room and into their sister's room. So I think we all just like went up there together. And I remember he showed me this drawing. He had like a very detailed drawing of a gun. And I mean, you know, very problematic, you know, just like why would a teenage boy have a drawing of a gun? And it was a very detailed drawing of like a Glock, like a pistol or something. And he had it like affixed to the wall right above his bed. So, you know, instead of waking up and seeing, I don't know, affirmations like, I am confident, I am healthy, I am prosperous, I am incredible, I am powerful. No, a Glock. And then I'm not trying to go on a tangent, but it's like, it would be no surprise to me if he ended up in prison, if he ended up, you know, gang banging, if he ended up even, you know, not that I'm speaking this over him, but like, you know, dying at the hands of a gun. Because it's like, why is that's your imagery, that especially like when you, the first thing you do in the morning time and the first things that you look at, that typically does have an impact on how you go throughout your day. So I just think it's very unfortunate that there was no one with enough sense in that household, like not one adult who I guess could tell him, or even set a good enough example for him to know that glorifying weapons of mass destruction, like guns, is not going to set you up for a positive future in your life. And it's very sad, like how in Black American culture, that like the normalization of gun violence is, I mean, it's so rampant. It seems to be okay. You know, there's no way my Caribbean self, not my West Indian parents, nope, not my West Indian parents would not allow something like that. And they were problematic in their own ways, of course, but there was no, we could not talk about some, you know, bang bang and, you know, all that kind of stuff. Absolutely not. And then to have guns on the wall, it's like, please, they will go get that holy water. Anywho, So anyway, yes, so he had no art on the wall, just a drawing of a gun. He had two beds in his room, and he had video games. He had like the whole room to himself. And then the door right next to his was the door to his sister's room. His immediate younger sibling was his sister, the only granddaughter of my foster mother. And she had this really pretty pink room. I remember thinking, like, one day, I would think to myself, one day I'm gonna have my own room and I'm gonna paint it pink. I'm gonna have my own house. I'm gonna paint it pink, because I just thought that she was so lucky to have a pink room, like with pink bedding, and her room just used to seem like a castle to me. And the only time I ever was allowed to go into her room was when caseworkers would come to the house. So I did mention that caseworkers would come to the home. Caseworkers would come to the home, I would imagine, maybe like every few months or so. I have several of those reports, and they typically documented what I said in my interviews. Typically, I talked about being excited to go back to school, excited to see my teachers, excited, or my teacher, like, each year, kindergarten, first grade, and I also, like, there's one report where, like, I showed my brand new backpack because, like, I was excited to go to school. I was always excited to go to school. I really like learning. I didn't like school, but I really like information. I'm a Capricorn, so I just like learning. I just like knowledge. True knowledge is power, especially if you apply it. So I was always excited about like anything having to do with school. I would imagine maybe there wasn't that much that I was excited about, like as it pertains to like the home and life in the foster home. So maybe that's why almost every single interview just looked like me saying that I was excited to get back to school or go back to school and to see my teacher. But yes, caseworkers would come to the house, and my foster mother would instruct my sister and I, as well as the other foster girls, the other two that I mentioned in the home, to pretend as if we slept upstairs. So remember I said that I don't know why there were two single beds in my eldest foster brother's bedroom, because he only slept in that room alone. But then I saw myself, because I'm like, oh yeah, it's probably because when the caseworkers would come to the home for these inspections, that was it was to look like we all slept in that room, or that we slept in those rooms upstairs. I specifically remember being instructed to lie. I remember being instructed to grab my teddy bears or my toys and go put them in the room and go put them on the bed. And we would lie. We were told to lie. And we were told to, pretend like we actually spent time in the bedroom, specifically my foster sister's bedroom, not my foster brother. So I'm guessing like the other two girls, the older foster girls, were instructed to pretend like they were in that bedroom. Now I do want to share some things, because it of course didn't dawn on me until like years later when I started to do this research. There were several Florida state laws broken. First of all, we were not supposed to be lying to caseworkers, so that's already I guess a charge or something. That's already wrong, right? Morally wrong, and just wrong altogether. But what I learned is that foster children are not supposed to, children of the same gender cannot stay in the same room. Children of the opposite gender cannot sleep in the same bedroom, and we are all supposed to have our own beds. So the reason why this is so important is because, like I said, several laws were broken. My foster sister had a double bed to herself, maybe a queen size, maybe a full size, either way. She had that room and that bed to herself. Like, she was like a little princess in the house, and my sister and I were instructed to lie and to say we slept in that bed. Well, according to Florida state law, foster children are not supposed to share a bed. So we were supposed to be in our own beds. So even if the caseworker believed that we actually slept in that room, any of the caseworkers should have and were obligated to bring it to the attention of the state agency that we were not put in our own beds. Furthermore, there were only three beds upstairs altogether, not including my foster mother's primary bedroom. So if there are four foster, stay with me because I'm throwing out numbers. Stay with me. So if there are four foster, I feel like I'm like in like one of those kids shows. Like if we have three boxes, how many? All right, stay with me. So if there are four foster children in a foster home, and you believe the lie, right? You believe as a caseworker that we all sleep only upstairs, that there's no one in the basement. I'm going to get to the structure of the basement in a moment. Then that means that, whoops, my clip ended. Anyway, if there are four foster girls in this foster home and we're all supposed to have our own bed and there are only three beds upstairs that are designated for the children, that means one child did not have their own bed. Like if you are a foster parent and you are saying, Bible, you're saying like that you're swearing like to the Lord and to the Bible that you are following the state agency rules and every foster child has their own bed, then that means that if there are only three beds upstairs, then one of the foster children would have to be sleeping in another bed. Well, let's go downstairs. Downstairs in the foster home, there were two bunk beds and two single beds. So that's a total of 6 beds, or single beds altogether. So, and mind you, there are 8 children in the home. So any genius would realize that if there are a total of 6 beds downstairs that are designated for children and 2 beds upstairs that are designated for children, each child does have a designated bed. However, the designations are what are violations of the law, because the state doesn't have anything to say, I guess, about where the biological grandchildren sleep. That's not the issue, and that's not the matter, because the state is paying my foster mother to the state is paying my foster mother to provide for us fosters, not for her biologicals. But I truly believe that that's what happens all the time. They go get us from these shelters, they take us from the custody of our parents, and they use us as a payday. But I'll get to that in a moment. So down in the basement, so for the entire 7.5 years that I lived in my foster mother's home, I did not have a bedroom. I didn't even realize the impact that this had on me until years later, when I was 15 going on 16, and I finally slept in a room by myself for the first time. And I could not sleep because it was so weird to not be in a room with other children with me, because all my life I had never slept in my own space. Furthermore, there have been times when I've been like to other people's homes, like people who have children, and I've seen like a child's bedroom, and sometimes I've become like a little bit emotional for a second and surprised, because I'm like, wow, so this is an idea of what my bedroom like should have looked like, especially if the state is paying you to provide as a foster parent. Like, I should have actually had a room. Instead, we had this very small space. If I had a picture, I would insert it. This very small space. It was like an L-shaped basement, right? But like the L was like this, basically. I don't know, like this, yeah. So the door is like right here. I should put a diagram. The door is like right here, and the bulk of the space was like right here. And then there was just like this shape right here. Anywho, this area, like when you first walk into the basement, the area to the right, like the longer part of the L, is where myself, my biological sister, and the other 2 foster girls slept. So we were just in the corner of the basement on these 2 bunk beds. Mine was made out of wood, and the other girls, their bunk bed was made out of metal, and I think painted red. So, and the floor was concrete. Like for the a bulk of the time, I remember the floor was literally just like a concrete basement floor. And then at some point, I remember they bought these faux wooden tiles, the like peel and stick kind that you just peel the layer back and then reveal the adhesive and place it down. So they did that for like a portion of the flooring. Like, I don't think that they lifted up the bunk beds and all that kind of stuff. They just put it like somewhat on the floor. So it's ghetto, And then there was the other side of the bunk, and it wasn't really a side, just the other corner. Like I said, it was like an L shape. So like this corner was the area that there were 2 single beds and then a deep freezer. So literally, like the boys slept in the basement with us. The 2 biological grandchildren who were the youngest, the younger boys, like closer to my age, older than me and my sister, for sure, but yeah, closer to our age than like their siblings were. And they literally had their beds in front of the deep freezer. So sometimes our foster mother would come downstairs to get, I don't know, turkey legs or something like that, like chitlins or something, and walk through like the little pathway in between their beds. Like I said, very ghetto and very much what any state agency would deem uninhabitable. Like if you search of what a room, what makes a room, or what like state agencies declare to be a room, the conditions of that basement were pretty far from what any state agency declares a room to be. Yet none of the caseworkers reported this. Like I said, I have several of the reports, and none of it says these children are being housed in a ghetto, uninhabitable space. No, instead it says, it shows like a check mark next to the words home in good condition, or it'll say like condition of the home, and they'll put like a check mark next to the word good. Diabolical. So anywho, uh, there was like a small like utility closet, and that little closet, I'm guessing it was once like a utility closet, like where radiators and stuff would go, but I think that they remodeled it or something like that. Not anything like extravagant or anything like nice or quality, but they just put like a little bed in there for my foster mother's adult daughter. And I remember she had a computer probably in there on AOL or something like that. And then she had like a makeshift closet, I think like a clothing rack or something. And I remember she had like like a 3-layer stereo set or something like that, like back when people used like radios and boom boxes and stuff. And every single Sunday she would play gospel music, you know, beat the hell out of us Monday through Saturday. But then, oh, praise the Lord, praise the Lord, praise the Lord. And then people wonder why people reject Christianity. I mean, it's obviously it's an attack on Jesus Christ and stuff like that, but it's like so many people who are, you know, Christians are hypocrites, and a lot of the people in the church are people who should be in hell, in my humble opinion. And I, you know, got an exposure to that firsthand, living with people who, like I said, beat the hell out of us Monday through Saturday, and then went to the church, talk about some praise the Lord, Jesus, 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 and then beat the hell out of the children. Jesus does not know you. I'm going to say it for Jesus. Jesus doesn't know you. So anywho, that's what we dealt with. You know, that was the structure of the home. In the basement, us foster girls had absolutely no privacy. And if you are familiar with, I think part 5, which is when I read like the whole synopsis, you probably remember that I spoke about not having any privacy, and how the boys, the 2 young foster, or they're not fosters, the younger grandchildren of my foster mother, they would come downstairs and we would be in the middle of disrobing. We would be, you know, moisturizing, getting ready for church, or maybe we just took a shower and we were downstairs like with our towels and stuff. And the boys would literally come downstairs and see us getting undressed. And the women, these are women, supposed to be, you know, women, supposed women who should know how that kind of thing is so uncomfortable and so vulnerable for us little girls. And none of them ever thought to put a screen or a curtain, or to just instruct their grandchildren to not come downstairs, or to instruct their sons and grandsons to not come downstairs when they knew that we were getting undressed. And I did speak about, I did write in the synopsis and read in that video, part 5, that I do believe that that exposure of my foster mother's grandson to us, like naked like that, I do think that that led to him sexualizing my body when I was only in kindergarten and sexually abusing me at that time, because I mean he got all of this exposure to us, and like specifically me, you know, the youngest of all the girls. But I will talk about that at another time. So anywho, there was something else I wanted to say about, oh yes, okay, so like I said, all of us children, we are supposed to have our own beds, and technically we did have our own beds. However, the lie was that we were all sleeping upstairs, that the beds downstairs in the basement were designated for the grandchildren, right? So like I said, if any caseworker actually believed that the laws were being abided by and that we were all sleeping in our own beds, then that means there's no way any caseworker could believe that my foster mother was following the law, because there were only 3 beds designated upstairs for the foster children, like according to the lie, right? Like I said, in reality, we didn't even sleep up there. But what was told to what was told to the caseworker is that only the foster girls slept upstairs, but there are only 3 beds upstairs. So that means one foster child had to be sleeping downstairs. When the caseworker went downstairs and saw all the beds downstairs, you know, it's pretty easy to assume or to recognize that actually we were being housed downstairs. That's where our toys were. Not that we have that money, but like that. And of course they would hide stuff and what have you. But it's like, if you care enough, then you will, you know, investigate as you're supposed to. But it's Florida, and I think we all know that there is something wrong with Florida. The worst stories, I mean, look at that Epscom situation. Isn't it based in where? Florida. It's like all the degeneracy, the debauchery, and you know, everything wrong with this country. A lot of it seems to stem from and be born in and come from or trace back to the state of Florida. You know, diabolical, like I said. So, and the fact that all these caseworkers overlooked this for 7.5 years, again, diabolical. And corruption is what that sounds like to me. Another thing, like I said, another violation of the law is that we were not supposed to share the same room as children of the other gender. Like I said, I do think that that my foster brother's exposure to us led to him sexually abusing myself, and I do believe that there was another girl who he sexually abused, but I will get to that another time. And yeah, I do believe that this had everything to do with my foster mother and her daughter violating state law by not placing their sons in an appropriate and separate bedroom, and leaving, like, even though we shouldn't have been in that basement, it's just like, why wouldn't they just put the boys in a room upstairs? Like, I don't know, put a bunk bed in the grandson's room, and then have one single bed, and all those boys could stay together. I want to say something. I know I need to move on, but I just want to say something, because I just think it is quite raggedy, and I think it is so offensive and frustrating to me, even now, yes, that my foster mother seemingly took money from the state so that let me backtrack. She took money from the state for 4 children, 4 girls. And it seems to me that she took that money and invested more of that money and cared to place more of that money towards the expenses and the care and giving a quality life to her grandchildren, which is their mother's responsibility. We were not the foster children of her adult daughter. We were her foster children. So the money that she was given from the state was supposed to go towards us. And we walked around with rags on. I didn't know that, but when I was transferred to my birth parents' custody, one of the first things that my biological siblings said to us is, "Why do you all look like that?" Even my father was like, "Why are you dressed like that?" Because I guess they had us in, I don't know, Little House on the Prairie, Pippi Longstocking-esque nightgowns from 1960s, I don't know, Titanic, you know, Jack, you know, like we looked like we were ancient, basically. Our clothing looked quite ancient. And it didn't make sense because they were paid, I don't know, almost like $700 or so, $800 per child. And this is the early 2000s when they were getting paid that much money or so, allegedly. I'm not really sure because I wasn't an accountant or anything at the time, and I wasn't in their finances, but I know that they were getting paid for us, and or that she was getting paid to care for us and to provide quality care and living conditions for us, and she did not do that. And instead, like I said, it seems that she cared more about making sure that her grandchildren, specifically the two eldest, were taken care of. And I don't know, maybe they had the same father and the other two didn't have, a good baby daddy, or maybe her daughter didn't have like a good baby daddy for the second two, so maybe she didn't care about the second two because she had the second two in front of the deep freezer, like I said, going to go get the chitlins, walking past her son's beds or her grandson's beds, and it was just atrocious. And like I said, a violation of the law. And like I said, it's frustrating and it's offensive because we as foster children, first of all, we don't ask to be foster children. We don't ask to be placed in the foster care system. When we are then placed into the foster care system, unfortunately for us, I just think it's very grimy of adults to then go get us from the system and then exploit us and abuse us, and to, I guess, to care so little for our humanity, to care so little for our well-being, and to not consider the impact that their actions have on us. Like I said, I didn't even know all that I was deprived of until years and years later. And yes, sometimes I have cried for so many reasons, of course. Not just that, but like what I realize now, and more every year that I grow into my young adulthood, like I realize all that I was deprived of. And I couldn't imagine. I couldn't imagine having a child and subjecting her to all of that. I can't imagine taking my big self, my grown self, to any foster agency, any shelter, to go get an animal or to go get a child and knowingly do so wrong to that child. I fear God too much. And I think people's problem in this raggedy, wretched world, in this wretched, tainted society, is people do not fear God. People don't have any fear of consequences. It's diabolical, as I keep saying. But that's just so frustrating to me and so offensive to me, even now, that she was more comfortable taking the money from the state and then having us in that raggedy basement. She didn't even want to live in that basement. I'm jumping ahead for a moment, but oh well, it's my video series. I'm going to do that. When we had to go through Hurricane Katrina, and I'll get to that, and I think that's like episode 4 or 3. No, episode 4, I think. When we had to deal with Hurricane Katrina, she was so uncomfortable in that basement because her big grown self did not want to sleep on a bunk bed. So if you don't want to sleep on a bunk bed, Mija, why do you think I would want to sleep on that bunk bed? Furthermore, why do you think I would want to be, or any child would want to be, in that grimy basement? No color on the wall, no paint, no butterflies. I, in my 20s, have butterflies on my wall. I have color on my wall, right? I have a faux plant, right? Curtains, right? Things that make a home feel like a home. Home decor, right? So if I, in my 20s, know that that makes a huge difference in how you feel, like in the quality of your environment, I don't know what middle-aged woman doesn't know the importance of, I don't know, slapping just a coat of paint. She thought that her grandsons, her grandson and her eldest grandson and her granddaughter were worthy of quality homes. Like I said, my foster, or she wasn't a foster, but the eldest girl in the home, she had pink walls. And I used to be like, why can't I have pink walls? Why don't I have pink walls? And they would say, one day you're going to have your own house, you have your own pink walls. You damn right. One day I will. However, I absolutely know now that I was entitled to pink, purple, red, blue, green. I was entitled to any color paint on the wall that I wanted. That money was supposed to go towards me and my well-being. And instead, she cared for her grandson to have blue walls and colorful this and that, and all these video games for him to bang bang and shoot, play all this kind of stuff, plaguing his mind, putting money towards whatever utensils he used to sketch a gun, and put papers of guns on the wall, sketches and drawings of guns on the wall. And yeah, I have my little toys here and there, but playing with toys on a concrete floor with your siblings, one of whom has raped you, that's not comfortable. That's not something that any foster child is supposed to be subjected to. Living just steps away, sleeping steps away from your abusers, because he abused me sexually, and I had to stay in that area, that corner of the basement for the remainder of that time, in fear that he would do it again. And then we all had his tyrant of a mother, his abusive mother, who would just come home from I don't know where, maybe work, and just grab the belt and start beating us senselessly, beating her children. And then when her mother wasn't around, she would beat us as well. So I had to live in fear of my abusers in that raggedy, wretched basement that, like I said, she didn't even want to be there. When we were there for Hurricane Katrina, that was the longest time she'd ever spent in that basement. But I guess in her mind, it was justified that we were subjected to that. And then, like I said, let me wrap it all together. These are the same people who do stuff like this, and they go take their ass, but they go take their ass to the church, talk about Jesus, to hell with you. That's how I feel, to hell with people like that. That's why people like me stray so far away from the Lord for so long. And yes, I found my way. I don't think I ever completely stray. I found my way. I think Jesus is within me, or maybe not Jesus, but God for sure, because I know I'm divine. My whole life situation and story and journey has been one of divinity. However, it's people, my point is, it's people like that who set such a piss poor, I'm going to say it again, piss poor quality and an example, a piss poor quality example of what it means to be Christian, what it means to be religious, what it means to be quote unquote God-fearing, what it means to be a believer, right? They ruin it for us. I rejected Christianity the way that you reject a call from a scammer, okay? For the longest time, because of the fact that I was introduced to God. And then I was introduced to so much pain, so much trauma, so much hurt, that I genuinely believe by the time I was in the 5th grade, 9 years young, that God hated me, because I thought there was no way that God could love me or care for me or be intentional about my life and subject me to all of this. And I still don't understand why I was subjected to it all. I still cry about that sometimes, because I truly believe that no child needs to be assaulted, no child needs to be trafficked, no child, there are some things I think do not need to happen in this world, yet they do. And I hear people when they say it was because God gives us free will. I don't fucking know why. I don't know why. I don't understand that. Maybe I won't ever understand that. And it hurts, because now I understand. I'm a young adult, but nonetheless, I've been in my 20s for a little while, and I understand one thing, which is that we all have choices. We all have choices. We all have choices. I think people don't realize that. So they allow their past and their pain and their trauma to fuel their decisions, as if you don't have the choice to go heal, as if you don't have the choice to do better, as if you have to choose to perpetuate everything that was wrong with your upbringing just because what? You're lazy, you don't want to seek help, you don't care enough about yourself. That's fine. Then you don't go get foster children from the foster care system and traumatize us too. Go traumatize yourself. Throw yourself off of a bridge if that's what you want to do. I'd advise some therapy, actually. But if you don't care enough about yourself to seek the help, ruin your own life. Don't go get someone's children and ruin their life. Like I said, to hell with you. Like the Nigerians say, thunder fire you. May thunder fire you. I'm going to wrap this up because I know that this is only supposed to be episode 2. This is episode 2. Excuse me, but I speak for the child who could not speak about these things, and I speak for the children in these situations. I came across a presentation that I did for my senior year AP psychology class. And of course, the presentation was about foster care and the negative outcomes of being in the system. And one of the things because that's how passionate all of this or that's how much of a passion all this is for me. And that's how much it affected me in my life, in my development. But one of the things that I read and placed in that presentation is that every 2 minutes, this was a 2014 statistic, right? I was a senior at the time of the statistic, but when I retrieved it, that was the data that I found. And it's that every 2 minutes, a child is placed into foster care. Every 2 minutes. Every 2 minutes, a child is placed into state custody. When you are state custody, you are state property. When you are deemed a ward of the state, you are state property. Prisoners are state property. Foster children are state property. They get to do whatever they want to you. Hence why I think, the hundreds of thousands of children go missing and they end up in that sex trafficking, human trafficking, organ trafficking pipeline. It's a perfect operation, don't you think? They get a supply every 2 minutes. I'm just saying, right? How many of the EPSCUM victims were foster children, right? One of the most prominent accusers, may she rest in peace, she also was in and out of foster homes during a period of her life when she was in junior high. Do you see the connection? They end up in foster care, and then they end up in these trafficking capitals of the world. They end up in the Caribbean, where these wretched beings go. They go to my people's region to go do their debauchery on our islands, keep our islands impoverished, keep our islands plagued and riddled with alcoholism and sex tourism and poverty, so that they can go down there and they can enjoy themselves engaging in debauchery. I'm over it. Anywho, my frustration, first of all, when I saw that statistic, I almost cried, because that was a presentation I did years ago, and I would imagine that the statistic is even worse now. Like that the supply or the pipeline of foster children or foster child to trafficking victim or incarceration or teen pregnancy and drug overdoses and so on and so forth. I would imagine that has only intensified and that has only worsened over the years, like this society has, right? But again, my frustration is that we all have choices, and these are things that don't actually have to happen to us. That's why I'm so passionate about self-development, because we as individuals can do better, and we should do better. And if you, like I said, don't have the capacity nor the desire to do better, then just don't have any children. But what I've noticed is it seems like, I was gonna say it's always, but I'll be generous and I'll say it seems like the worst people, it's the people who don't have who shouldn't have any children who have children. Look around. Notice that. It's the people who have no business having any children because they have had zero development, right? They lack emotional intelligence. They're emotionally and mentally stunted individuals, and they got 1, 2, 3, 4 children. Why? And I can't stand that in this society. What we do is every time someone is pregnant, oh my God, congratulations. Oh my God, congratulations. Oh, is it a gender reveal? It's going to be a boy or girl? Oh my God. Why? When I hear someone's pregnant, why? That's what comes to mind. Look at this economy. Look at this government. Look at the corruption all over the world. Look at the world right now. There's literally a war. For what? These men, like I've said for years, these men need to get in a ring and punch each other, measure their penises, swing their penises around, because that's all it is. It's a dick swinging contest. Excuse my language. But they need to get in a ring and they need to fight it out, and they need to leave us alone. They need to absolve us from all of this chaos that they perpetuate, they create, and then we're left to deal with the shambles and the rubble of it all, and the inflation of it all. And people are just look at all throughout the pandemic. I understand people had a lot of time on their hands. That was your time to develop. We all went through the global health pandemic, and then we went through our own personal pandemics, I believe. That was your time to grow. That was your time to evolve. That was your time to shed any dead weight, literal weight if you wanted to as well, right? But that was your time to invest in yourself and your wellness. And I guess people decide to go have all these pandemic babies. So, and it's frustrating to me because I know I'm a living, breathing example. I am an example, a testimony of what happens when people who are not fit to have any children decide to. And then this society says, oh, just give them to the foster care. I'm telling you, do not put your children in that system. Do not have any children that you know that you cannot care for, that you've not prepared for. Like, why is planned pregnancy not a thing anymore? Why every time someone is pregnant, just like a bunch of birds, we're just, no, I'll applaud after in 20 years. When we hear from the child what happened, then you could get your round of applause from me. But my first question is why? It's not, oh, congratulations. I don't know if it's going to be a congratulations. That child, people love to be like, well, children are always a blessing. I think children can be a blessing. And I think that for a lot of people, children turn out to be a burden, not because the child, the soul is a burden. The circumstances in which the child is born turn out to be so dire or so tumultuous that having the child becomes a burden. And then the adults typically, in all their emotional stuntedness and all of their mental stuntedness, take it out on the child. And most people do not grow up like me. Most people don't extract themselves from that situation, literally emancipate themselves from that situation, process all that has happened to them, do all of this immense self-work in order to not perpetuate it throughout their adulthood. No, most people just go grab a shot of tequila every few hours, or go through a bottle of, I don't drink, go through a bottle of whatever, snort whatever, consume whatever, pop whatever, and rot from the inside while they're still alive, and then poison their bodies, poison the minds of the youth, take their pain out and spread it all over the world, starting in the home, starting in the house that doesn't ever feel like a home. And then the people got the nerve to say, oh, go put the child in the foster care system. Thunder, fire, you. In the words of the Nigerians. Anywho, my battery is going to die, and I know this is going to be very long to edit. Oh well. So that's what I had to say. I had a lot to say about that. I'm going to wrap this video up and just share just a few more things about, because I think I covered all of it, but there were just a few things I wanted to say about other people. This is quite a transition, but stay with me. So a few other things that I wanted to say was about like who came to the home. There were, like I said, we didn't have like men in the home, fortunately, with the exception of my foster sisters, like, I don't know, boyfriends or whoever they were. I remember there being, I think, 2 different boys. Who knows? I was very young. It could have just been one boy. But these boys seemed like they were older than her. Like when she was probably like 14, 15. And they were really tall. So they could have been like, 17, 18. I don't know, but I don't even think that these were boys that were in high school anymore. I know that back then people love to glorify like the 80s and 90s, and I'm like, why? That's when your mothers were smoking while pregnant with you. That's when men or young men in their 20s would come to the high schools and pick up these girls and impregnate these girls. These people glorify, not to mention, wasn't the crack epidemic also rampant throughout the 80s and 90s. People love to look at the music, the debauchery, look at what was happening in the music industry that the people are talking about now. These people sit on the internet and they glorify the 80s and 90s and they bastardize us Gen Zers. You can never get me to hate being a Gen Zer because we know way more now. And if you as an adult have such a criticism, if you're a millennial or boomer, Gen X, whatever, and you got a criticism for how us Gen Zers are, blame yourself because we came after you. So you all set the example for us. It's so irritating when they get in the comment section, they're like, these Gen Z kids, da, 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 da. We are your children. Remember that. Like, I think that people, they glorify the 80s and 90s and stuff, and I'm like, wait, we can literally, any Gen Zer can go into Chat GPT or whatever, you know, whatever, or go use the Encyclopedia Britannica, because that is a thing still, and you can find so many examples of what was wrong with the 80s and the 90s, especially like even the high school culture of how people weren't able to like be individuals. You had to fit into a category, a goth, a jock, the, you know, the whatever, you know, the geek or the nerd. Like people weren't allowed to be as expressive and transparent and like, you know, like we are now in Gen Z. So I don't know, it bothers me that people love to bastardize us. But yes, so she had these older, like the culture back then, she had these seemingly older so-called gentlemen, these so-called young men who would come to the house, and she would, I'll talk about it in another video, but yeah, so those were like the only men or male, you know, human beings that came to the house. And of course it was only when her mother and her grandmother weren't around, because she would have gotten in trouble. So when she was supposed to babysit us, like when she would take us to the park, she would be sitting on their laps. I did mention that in one of the videos that I've done in the past. Like she would be sitting on their laps and stuff, and she exposed us to inappropriate things. I remember them being in her room. I believe that they were engaged in, you know, sexual intimate acts, and she was supposed to be watching us, and like her brothers were there like peeping into the door and giggling and stuff like that, because they knew or could figure what was going on with something inappropriate. So other than like those boys that would come to the house, the only other male figure that would come to the house was my foster uncle, like I said. I don't remember being like super close to him, but I do remember there was like a birthday party, and I think it was my foster mother's birthday party, and her birthday was around the same time as mine, like I think just a few days apart. So I think he was there for her birthday, and he had a motorcycle. So he put me on the back of his motorcycle and like took me around the block or a couple of blocks like on his motorcycle, and it was like one of the most like exhilarating and like exciting things I had ever experienced. And I think that's why I don't think I would ever like own a motorcycle, because I don't know, I value my life so much. Like I don't like to put myself in harm's way at all. That's why like I don't drink and stuff like that, because like no, I like to be like in control, and like yeah. But it was cool, it was exciting. Maybe a moped, like I could see myself, you know, cruising on a moped perhaps, but not a motorcycle. But yeah, it was cool. And then her friends, my foster mother's friends, would come over to the house. I remember they would like move the furniture, like the coffee table, and they did like the electric slide, like you can feel it, it's electric, boogie boogie boogie. I remember that song. I love that song, and you know it's there. Anyway, let me move on. But yeah, they would dance to that song, Electric Boogie. I love that song so much, and the memory is it's one of my more positive ones from that time. But yeah, I used to think her friends were so cool when they would get together and dance and stuff. I do remember one of her friends, I don't remember her name, but I remember like the day that I found out that I was a foster child, it was because one of her friends came over and was just speaking quite loudly. And or loud enough for me to hear my name. And I remember her being like, does she know? And I just like crept out and crawled. I was actually upstairs. I think all the children were upstairs in the eldest grandson's room, like watching a movie or watching him play video games. And I just heard something, and I don't know, my spirit just like led me out there. But I'll talk about that in another video. So yeah, those were the frequent visitors, like my foster mother's friends, and like people from the church. We were avid church goers. Like I said, I was really introduced to God and like Jesus. I was in the church dance group. I was in the ¿cómo se llama? The choir. I was in the choir. So, and I was in Bible study. So I was like in church all the time. Like on Halloween, I was in church. Like I was one of those children. Pardon the sirens, but yeah. I was like in church a lot, so like I said, it felt like a deep betrayal when I started to be like abused, in, you know, different ways, and just exposed to so much trauma, and I just didn't understand. Like there was no one around to counsel me. Like I should have been placed in therapy, and I wasn't. So no one helped me to like make sense of it all. Not with like from a faith standpoint, which, you know, it can be problematic the way people love to like blame God for everything and be like, oh, it's God, like just let go, give it to God, you know, all that kind of stuff. Like, but yeah, no one was there to counsel me through it. No one was there to help me make sense of it all. So I just started to like definitely stray away from anything having to do with the church, even then when I was still in the foster home. And then of course later on when I was transferred to my birth parents' custody, and things just like intensified or worsened in my life. um, um, we also, my sister and I were also like in this I don't know, like dance and singing group, like I don't know, an ensemble, and we performed in the church, we performed at school, like in plays and stuff like that, and then we also performed at events. I'm not really sure like what this was and who organized it. I just remember going to some like formal events, being dressed really formally, like in big, like poofy dresses, and having to stand up and like perform and sing in front of all of these people who are wearing suits and like formal, you know, formal attire. And I don't know what those things were. I just remember performing. I was also asked to sing, to lead the class in my kindergarten, or I think, no, my preschool graduation ceremony. I think it was preschool or kindergarten, one of the two. But I don't have that footage. It would be so nice. I actually don't have any pictures from the beginning of my life. Like, I don't have anything. I don't have anything. So, yeah, it would be nice to see that and to see the footage. I mean, to see those things and to see the footage of me singing. But yeah, those are just like some things I remember from my time in the foster home. The family dynamic, oh yeah, I think I touched on some things, but for the most, like I said, like for the most part, I clung to my foster mother. My biological sister, she's like almost 2 years older than me, and you would think that we'd be so close, especially because she knew I was her sister and that the other children were not. But we were actually not close at all. She tormented me. I may have like spoke about this briefly in other videos, but she was like my first bully. She did awful weird things to me. I'll talk about it in the next episode. But yeah, we did not have a close dynamic at all. She would just do like weird, like sick things to me, you know. And then the boys that were closer to our age, like I said, one of them sexually abused me, so I like stayed away from him. And then the other one, he was, I don't know, just, they were both like just weird. Their energy was really weird, and their mother would beat them like senselessly, and to the point of them hollering and screaming for their lives, and they would always get in trouble. So I just stayed away from them to avoid getting in trouble. And then the older siblings, the older two foster girls, they didn't really want anything to do with us, probably because like we were younger. They were also a bit weird. Everybody was, you know, it's Florida, everybody's weird, you know. I remember, I don't know if I'll just save it for like the another episode, but yeah, they were weird. I'll save what I was getting ready to say for another episode. They were just like weird. They you know, weirdness isn't always a bad thing, but there's a good kind of weird, and then there's the, like, you know, hide your kids, hide your wives, you know, weird, like that meme. Yeah, so there was a little bit of that energy. So yeah, I clung to my foster mother because everyone, like the eldest foster girl, she was like a princess, walked around the house kind of like, you know, I think unscathed, like did whatever she wanted. Um, you know, took care of me sometimes. I will say I appreciate that she was there for me when I was sexually abused. Not that she gave me much counsel, but she was there when I was in dealing with the aftermath, like in the shower and stuff. And yeah, I would save that for another episode though. And then the eldest boy, like I said, he had a gun affixed to the wall, or a drawing, excuse me, a sketch of a gun. So I didn't want anything to do with him because, you know, degeneracy. So yeah, there was literally like, I was like probably the only like childlike child in that foster home. So I felt alone for the most part. I clung to my toys. I had like different Barbie dolls. I do appreciate all the toys that she gave me. You know, it is the least she could do, so I appreciate it. But you know, it's pretty standard that you give children toys, right? So, but I appreciate that. And not only did I have Barbie dolls, but I had brown skin Barbie dolls and brown skin Barbie dolls of all different shades. I had like the Bratz dolls. I remember the one. There were a few that I liked more than others, but I'll keep that to myself. But yeah, I enjoyed whatever I could. I enjoyed playing with the other kids. And sometimes, you know, like sometimes I couldn't keep up. Sometimes they didn't want me around because they would get yelled at by my foster mother. But I enjoyed like roller skating, not rollerblading. I don't like the blades, but I like roller skating with the two wheels in the front and the two wheels in the back. Like that was like more like appropriate for me. I enjoy being on a bike and like the way it feels with the wind on your hair and on your skin. We were able to play outside until like the street lights came on. That was the rule, and we couldn't go. There was one lamppost, and we were just told, don't go past that lamppost and like you're good. So of course the kids would not listen and they would get in trouble, but I would be there. Sometimes but I would, stay close to the house. I mean, so that my foster mother could always look out the window and see me. I remember we were playing in dirt one time, and because we like to play in the sand and like sand castles or make sand castles and sandboxes, but we didn't always have that option, right? Like to go by the water, So I remember one time we were playing in the dirt, and my foster mother came out and she yelled at us and she told us we were going to get worms if we play in the dirt. So ever since then, like for the longest time, I stayed away from dirt, and I like gardening now, right? Like, but there was a time where I was just like, how come she doesn't get any worms when she's in her garden? But I don't know. I think she was talking about like ringworms, and I don't really understand how that whole thing works, but I remember like so much from my childhood. I in general have like a very strong memory and like really strong recall. But yeah, I remember like no, my camera died. I mean, my battery died. So, but it's okay. I was in the midst of wrapping it up, just recalling things. But it's okay. Some say it's a mistake. It's electric. Boogie, boogie, boogie. And you know it's there. I got to move. Anyway, I'm trying to remember what was the very last sentence that I said, but it's okay. There are literally more episodes, so it's okay. I think I said all that I needed to say. I mainly spent this episode talking about the family structure, the family dynamic, and then I just included my sentiments and my thoughts about some other things that pertain to what it is like to be a foster child who has parents, or a foster parent, I should say, who is neglectful of your needs as a child. And one thing I just want to say is all children deserve, like that quote, the quote is so, the quote that says, all children deserve parents, but not all parents deserve children. Like it's something like that. It is so true. So anywho, all children deserve quality care, right? But what I would emphasize is that when you are a foster child, that in itself can be very traumatic, because at some point in time, you are going to more than likely have a plethora of questions. You're going to go through a period of self-discovery that those of us, that's unique to the experience of being told that a set of people are your family, and then finding out one day that that's not true, and then having to process things like, well, what happened, and I think what a lot of us go through is wondering like what was so wrong in our parents' lives and with our parents' like level of parental fitness that we couldn't receive like the conventional or the normal upbringing that we deserve, that all children deserve. Like this world is something else, right? And everyone will find that out at some point in time. You'll be exposed to trauma and you'll be exposed to pain, right? There is no, this is just the nature of life, yin and yang. There's light, there's darkness, there's salt, there's sugar, there's good, there's bad. I remember reading, there's this book, I think it's by Aristotle or something like that. It's called the Nicomachean Ethics, and someone gave it to me when I was a junior in high school. And I remember, I think I highlighted it actually. There was this line in this section that was about the concept of goodness and badness, and essentially what I recall is that like there is not one without the other. Like they say, like you cannot know good without bad. You cannot know love without hate, right? Because all of those things exist simultaneously, or exist like all together in this world. Like you're going to know one and then you're going to know the other. what has helped me is realizing that everything is temporary in this life. So if you're going through a season, or what I have had to tell myself is, if I'm going through a season during which it's like, metaphorically speaking, there's like heavy rainfall, I remind myself that that just means that the season of sunshine is coming soon. And when you're in that season of sunshine, understand, don't get too comfortable. Don't get too comfortable. Because at some point in time, the rain will come back. That's just the cycle. It's the circle of life. It's that, right? So what I'm saying is, it's inevitable that we will all know some form of suffering. However, I don't believe that we are supposed to, nor are we meant to, be exposed to such suffering when we are children, especially when we are in our, what's supposed to be our homes, and when we're in the custody and the care of our parents, because you're already going to go into this world and suffer. As parents, as so-called family, you are not supposed to expedite that process. You're not supposed to, make the child like catapult into the period of suffering. If anything, you're supposed to prepare your child for this world. I think maybe not shield. Like, I think parents do a disservice when you like shield your children from the reality that the world is not all like sunshine and raindrops and butterflies and happiness and stuff like that. But you're not necessarily supposed to bring in the trauma, and you're supposed to equip your children to be mentally fit, emotionally intelligent, and have a sound mind, have a positive enough outlook on life, and the tools to process and navigate this world, so that when it is our time to be adults, young adults, that is, pre-young adults, that is, like when we're 18 to 24, and that prefrontal lobe has not developed, we can have the tools and the confidence and the sense of security and trust within ourselves to be able to traverse throughout this world. But I think so many people don't take parenting seriously. I know that many people do not take parenting seriously. And like a bunch of goofy goobers, we sit here and we applaud when people say that they're pregnant, instead of asking, why? Not that I'm telling other people that they need to respond that way, but my question is just always like, well, why? Like, does that make sense to you? And I think if you pay attention, typically when people say that they decide to have their children, if you notice, the reasons are almost always selfish. It's not usually, their response is not usually, oh, because I actually believe with all my, sound mind and with all my confidence and in all my heart, that I really will be, that I am capable, and that I am willing and I'm determined to provide my child with all that she needs to thrive and to prosper in this world. No, it's, oh, because I wanted a baby. Oh, because children are a blessing. Oh, because I didn't want people to shame me for getting an abortion and all this other stuff. And it's all this selfish stuff. Nobody thinks about how the child is going to feel. And then what parents do so much of, especially it seems like, in today's society, is, well, actually, no, maybe it's always been this way. It just like it's been repackaged. But what I think parents do is just beat the children and shame the children and manipulate the children into being silent about how they are suffering under their parents' roof and under their parents' domain. And then these millennial, boomer, Gen Xers, they get on the internet and then they run their mouths about and complain about us Gen Zers being on the internet, quote unquote, telling our business. But you're right here listening to us tell our business, right? Learning nothing. In the comment section, like, oh, these children need to get off the internet telling their business. Well, maybe if you created a safe home, maybe if you put the child in therapy, right? Maybe the child wouldn't even have to come to the internet like some sort of last resort to, or like some kind of call for help, or like as this attempt to get some understanding and some clarity, or to know that they are not alone, because it does actually make a difference when you finally get the courage to speak about your life experiences and people let you know that you're not alone. Instead of reflecting and I mean the adults, instead of the adults reflecting on their own behaviors, their own traumas or traumatic experiences and what it did to them, how it stunted them, how it scarred them, and how it still pains them to this day. Instead, they bottle it up, grab the bottle, and further use it to bottle it up, right? And then take, like I said, take it out on the children and beat the children, pressure the children, manipulate the children, gaslight the children into silence. With remarks like, oh, all the things I did for you, oh, I lost everything to give this to you. Nobody asked you to be a parent. And I will say, I think most of the children of the world would say that if we knew that you would be our parent, we most definitely would have asked for you to be our parent. So you can't, gaslight me with that one. Oh, I suffered so hard for my children. And you didn't learn anything from your suffering. And that's why your children are once again suffering. Each generation is supposed to do better. Each generation is supposed to have it a little bit easier, right? I would never want to trade places with my ancestors. But I don't know too many people who would want to trade places with me and everything that I've gone through. Because my predecessors, my parents, in my opinion, didn't do a good enough job, or much of a job, I would say, at protecting me from harm's way. No, instead they put me right there in harm's way. So much so that I had to go to the courthouse, that I had to leave my English class when I was 16 and go to the courthouse and essentially beg, demand, and petition the United States government to give me my freedom, to relinquish me from them, because that's how bad it is. Or that's how bad it was. And unfortunately, I think there are a lot of children who are in that same or similar situations where their home life is so dire that the responsibility or the idea of taking full responsibility for themselves when they're literally still children seems more favorable and is more desirable than being under the control and the mentorship or the quote-unquote parental guidance of the people who they are supposed to be their parents. It's an epidemic in this society. It's an epidemic. But I digress. I rest my case. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I'll save the rest for the next portion for episode 3. So anywho, my closing remarks are thank you for listening. I hope that you learned something, and specifically something that is like insightful and valuable and intellectually stimulating, because I tend to have that effect on people. But yes, in all seriousness, thank you. Yeah, I think that's all I really have to say. Thank you for listening. I think that it's helpful for me to get these things off my chest. I do not apologize for the way that things come out sometimes, because like I said in other videos, if you think it's uncomfortable to listen, imagine how uncomfortable it is to carry the emotion and carry the weight of it all, and to have been shamed into silence, to have been manipulated and gaslit for so long, and to have internalized all the trauma to mean that you did something wrong, or that you didn't fight hard enough, or that you didn't advocate for yourself. And I realize now, I realized way too late in life that no, I just shouldn't have been in those situations. So I'm processing things, learning things, getting things off my chest, all the while doing this series. And I'm grateful to be able to do so. I'm glad, because the child that I was did not get the opportunity at all. And one thing I knew before I entered that pre-young adult stage, before turning 18, and while I was in that stage of 18 to 24, I just knew that I was not going to carry all this weight and this pain and this trauma deep into my adulthood. I'm in my young adulthood right now, gracias a Dios. But yeah, I'm glad to be doing the work, because one thing I used to say is, God, if I reach that person's age, please don't let me be like this person. Don't let me be like emotionally stunted, mentally stunted. Don't let me be toxic. Don't let me be like, a waste of life, or just a waste of a human specimen due to me, or due to, because I've seen so many people who just waste themselves away. And I'm like, no, like, as a Nigerian say, God forbid, God forbid. So yes, I'm very grateful to be able to get these things off my chest and to package it all in this, I think, insightful and very informative uh, series. At least I think it will be for some people. So yes, if you enjoy the series and if you learned anything, I'm glad for you. Again, thank you for listening. And then I did mention the last one, I'm going to mention again, that if you have my poetry collection titled Things I Never Said, then I do encourage you to review some of the poems as you desire to. Go at your own pace, because it's pretty heavy material. But review some of the poems if you enjoyed any of them. Because some of the things that I speak about in this series do, or actually a lot of the things that I talk about in this series do come up all throughout the poetry collection. So things will make more sense to you if you've read the poetry collection, or if you have the poetry collection. If you're interested in the poetry collection, you can also go buy it and then read it, because yes, like I said, things will make sense to you. It's called Things I Never Said. It is in the description. It looks like this. So yeah, on that note, I would say thank you for listening, Tata mi amores, and take care.
In an instant, anatomy all I see, and the lights get out, and the lights get out, and the lights get